We all go a little mad.
Forget you.
You are under darkness.
Here's Johnny.
All right. Hello, and welcome to the Horror Hour, the place where we discuss, debate, and disagree on all things horror. So I'm one of the co-hosts here, Yutaka. Hello. And I'm actually joined with several of our co-hosts then, George.
Hello.
My stomach goes. Grr. And then Ben.
Hi, everyone.
And then Liam.
Hello.
Fair enough. And today we are joined with and I should have asked this before, but it's Phil Nobile Jr.
Got it. Nobile.
Yes.
Boom. Nailed it in one.
The editor-in-chief of Fangoria and also an executive producer on one of my favorite recent series on Shudder. Behind the Monsters.
Yeah,
and then also the other documentary, which I really enjoyed, Horror Noire, a history of black horror. And then a Bond aficionado. And then also I just love his interactions on Twitter. They're amazing.
Someone has to. And it was you. Thank you for that.
So we'll first start off with Behind the Monsters. I'm curious if there was, or hopefully there will be, if there's going to be a season 2, or if there were there any franchises or monsters that were left out that you would have wanted to include?
Sure. I mean, it was Shudder came to us. It was basically the production company that had done Horror Noire. It came to us with the idea for the thing, and we gave them a pitch. And my original pitch was, we've heard these stories a million times, and I've watched them all. So if we're interested in doing something a little different, and we sort of landed on the iconography of each character, the puzzle box, the hook, and that kind of thing. But what drove the 6 episodes was who was alive to talk about it, honestly. And in that light, Freddie was really on the fence as even one to include, because Wes is gone and we couldn't get Mr. England. He was busy and it was COVID and whatnot. So that one almost didn't happen. But all things being equal, I really wish we had done a Leatherface episode.
I would have liked to have seen that as well.
Yeah, maybe they'll do some more, and maybe there'll be a Leatherface, and I think that you could do a Ghostface one with it. It would have its own spin because it's not about Ghostface is not a character, right? That's a franchise that is definitely based on the protagonist rather than the killer, which is interesting. I think you can do an Alien one and make it pretty interesting. There's plenty of iconic horror characters from the last 40, 50 years that we could have covered, but there was a cap at 6. And it was a process to sort of see who made the cut.
I reviewed Behind the Monsters with Yutaka, and it was such a joy. It was something that I'm such a nerd. Like, I love the story of like Halloween, like behind the scenes and stuff like that. I think it's a great Hollywood story. And it was really interesting to see Irwin Yablans, who doesn't typically give like a lot of these sit-down interviews. It was great to see him finally talk about it, because we've seen so much from so many other people. So what I was wondering is, how did you go about assembling the interviews for this series?
All right. Well, we're not going to tell Shudder I did this episode because I don't know how much I'm supposed to tell. But the Irwin Yablans interview was from 2010, from a 2-hour documentary that I produced on Halloween back when for A&E. And that's also the Jamie Lee Curtis interview was from there. And some of the John Carpenter interview was from there. And I was grateful for the opportunity to be able to include some of those clips and sound bites that we didn't get to include in that 2-hour doc, but that's where those came from. But for the Halloween thing, which was 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, our goal was basically to get everybody we could. We got the little kid in the clown mask from the preamble in that thing. And we got I'm trying to remember, but like, I think the only reason we didn't get the Steadicam operator because he was on a shoot or something, but we really went for everybody. And those were the marching orders for that 2010 thing. But fortunately for us, we had those interviews on the shelf for the Michael Myers episode. But in that regard, it wasn't very much about the making of the film, this series. It was a little bit more about how did the character become the icon that we recognize today. That was the sort of the mandate for every single episode. And I think that you could, each one has their own little narrative about how that happened, I think. And to me, the way to what made it interesting for me was to explore the differences. For instance, Jason, who's caught up in legal limbo, to me, I thought it was a really interesting sort of footnote to his story that the fans have decided to just make the movies anyway, because the producers are fighting and they're in court, so you can't legally make them. But Jason lives on in these sort of kind of intricate high-end fan films that are like recruiting actors from the original franchise. It's such an interesting sort of commentary on how these characters impact the fans on a very profound level that I think we still haven't fully explored.
Yeah, that's something that's. Oh, sorry.
No, please, Ben, carry on.
I was just saying that it is really interesting with Friday the 13th. I think that legal battle recently just ended, and I think it would be a great thing to see Jason come back at some point. Like, he was back in 2010 or 9 with the remake, but I think him coming back again would be amazing. And also, Freddy is someone who I think there's a lot of great talent out there, like someone like Mike Flanagan or someone like that could really bring these people back, because we have Ghostface coming back. Michael Myers is back in spectacular fashion, and Leatherface is coming back next year as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they ever do come back. But Never Hike Alone is incredible.
It's a lot of fun. I think so. David Bruckner, who's rebooting Hellraiser right now, his last film was called The Night House, and he did some dream sequences in there that really made me think that he should take a swing at Freddy one day, because his eye for dream sequences was uncanny to me. It was like, I was like, this is what it feels like when I'm dreaming. Yeah, he really nailed it, and I'd love to see that sensibility in an Elm Street film if he's available. I don't know.
If he's listening. But yeah, talking of the icons of horror, I feel like we all have our own questions, and I feel like mine are like questions a 12-year-old would ask, but I'm still going to ask them. Who would you rather spend the holidays with, Freddy, Jason, or Michael?
Neither. None of them. They're murderers.
None of them.
Come on.
I could see Freddy given a good turkey. He could put it up for you.
Yeah, I mean, but no, there's nobody. I think, we asked this question, who would you rather hang out with in the series? And everyone picked Pinhead, because Pinhead isn't just there to kill you. He's doing a job. You might live. You could talk to him. You could talk your way out of it. Nothing personal with Pinhead. He's a bureaucrat from hell. And there's no like real evil there. It's just pleasure and pain, and where you are on that spectrum is, kind of your call. But that was a question we all raised. And then we asked, God, I don't know how much of it made it into the finals, but my original idea was to ask people about icons that they weren't involved with. I really wanted to kind of like cross-pollinate all of it. And I don't know how much of it made it into the final episodes at this point, but I had Tom Savini just talking shit on all of these monsters that he wasn't involved with. Like, he hated Chucky. Chucky's not scary. You can kick him across the room. He hated, oh God, he talked so much shit on so many different franchises. And I really wanted to like make that a thread in 6 episodes, but clearer heads prevailed, I guess.
I was dying watching the Boulay brothers talk about Chucky. I was living, because they weren't having it. So.
They're a lot of fun.
I am kind of also curious, because one of the things I do love about the 2 documentaries that you put out there in terms of on Shudder, like the Horror Noire, because I think representation is important, and I'm hoping maybe one day we can see something in similar fashion for Asian horror. But what was it or how did you go about getting that off the ground?
So I'm good friends with a writer named Ashley Blackwell. She lives in Philadelphia, as I do, and we hang out from time to time, and we would see each other at horror conventions or grab lunch and stuff. And I've told the story a bunch, but I'm going to try to do a streamlined version of it for you. But I pretty much walked out of Get Out in 2017, and I called her up and I said, this seems significant. Like, not just like another horror movie or a cool horror movie. This seems like we're rounding a corner of some kind. What do you think about that? She goes, oh, I think so. You should read this book called Horror Noire by Robin Coleman. And she sent me the book, or pointed me toward the book. And we just started talking, just having lunches a couple of times a month, and just trying to figure out what that would look like. Because I was foolish in thinking that Get Out was the beginning of something, when really, Ashley correctly identified it as sort of a culmination of something, really 100-year history that hadn't been told yet. And I was opportunistic and said, if we don't do this, someone's going to do this. And my background is in production. Before Fangoria, I produced nonfiction television for 20 years, but Ashley knew this story up and down, and I knew how to sort of like the pipeline of how to send it through the machine to sort of get it told. So we were partners on it for a year, and we flew to LA. We pitched it to Monkey Paw. We pitched it to A&E, I think Bravo, I think Blumhouse, and everybody was like, no. And it was sort of inside baseball. It's a little too inside, and I don't think this is a story that can sustain. And a year of that happened. And and Shudder disagrees with me, but like, honestly, Shudder was like, yeah, maybe. But then after Jordan Peele won the Oscar in 2018, that show was greenlit a week later. So I'm just saying. And, originally we pitched it as a 4-part series and had an outline of like where it would start and whatnot. And Shudder at that point hadn't greenlit a ton of original productions, but they took a leap of faith on us. As long as we delivered it as a single feature length thing, we were off to the races. And then from that point on, Tananarive Due became a big part of that story because she literally teaches the class about this topic. So I just always want to make sure I'm giving those 3 women proper credit because they were the 3 brains behind the whole thing. I just sort of saw an opportunity of how we could make it happen. And like I like to say, I threw a dinner party and like set the table, and then they had the dinner party. But it was it clearly was the right move. I do think that we could have made it twice as long and made it just as good. And the stuff that's been greenlit and in the pipeline since then has been just amazing to see. And I don't know, I think it's one of the proudest moments of my career that we made that thing happen. And I'm super fortunate to be part of it. I tell anybody who listens.
It was really great to see. It like you said, I didn't know much in terms, and so for me it was certainly eye-opening, and I was happy to see that being told, and then to finally also then see them also make their own horror noir film or anthology,
right,
was just really just wonderful.
Yeah, and it's not stopping. And that was the thing. We filmed it in the summer of 2018, and one of the things that Tananarive said and some other folks said was like, we hope it's like the worst thing that could happen is if we're just cashing in on a fad. And like, if this is a thing and it happens and it's over by the time this thing airs, that would just be really depressing. But it hasn't stopped. Like, you could make a sequel to that documentary tomorrow and not have hardly any overlap, just based on the things that have happened since 2018. So yeah, I'm super proud of it. I'm super happy with how it turned out. I got my little horror noir candle here that they sent out.
I just finished mine.
It's not bad.
It's a good documentary. Mine yet.
It smells good too. It's a good documentary. It's important, and it smells good. So, yeah,
I love it.
And and the cool thing, the cool thing is once it landed on Shudder, then there was this sub-channel on Shudder of all this black horror that people hadn't known about yet. Mm-hmm. And God, I wrote about Ganja and Hess probably 10 years ago on a website, and nobody knew about it. And I was always banging the Ganja and Hess drum. And now you see like Ganja and Hess, that image from Ganja and Hess is like always online, and somebody's always talking about it somewhere. I love that we just like rattled the cages enough to really get people talking about these older films again. Aside from the new stuff, like there's so much rich history that people I think were dismissive of and hand waved and like thought it was blaxploitation and thought it was corny, but there was really interesting shit happening in there on like super deep levels. And I don't know, I feel like I did my part there. I'm grateful that people are, that Ganja and Hess is on Shudder, that people are excited about black horror. It was more successful than I thought it would be. I'll say that.
I'm happy it was. I mean, I think when we, one of the other things too is I hope it also gives more opportunity to just creative talent in general, because that's one thing, hopefully as we spoke with Jeffrey Reddick, and that's one of the biggest things. There's just this untapped resources of all this talent out there that's not being used because you don't want to tell those stories or you don't want to cast them. And I just feel like I'm hoping more comes out of this.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a shift, and I think it's exciting. And the irony is that you're talking to an old white man about it right now on your podcast. But hey, we're doing our best here. It's Jeffrey's great, and I regret that I didn't tap Jeffrey for that documentary. I wasn't connected to him at that point, and I since was, and we interviewed him for the queer horror doc that's in post now, and for Behind the Monsters as well. You want to create space for these stories to happen, but you want them to happen authentically and organically. I mean, if they won't happen organically, then people like us can give things a nudge, hopefully, but authentic is the thing. You don't want it to be, what's the word I want to use? You don't want it to be like begrudgingly given to these voices. You want them to really be set up for success. Because I do see a lot, and I will not name names, but I do see a lot of moves made in horror where people are hiring for optics, but then not setting those individuals up for success. And then those individuals who are the face of that project take all the shit when the thing doesn't succeed. And you're like, well, you kind of started shooting without a script and you gave them like 3 weeks to prepare. And that's the wrong way to do it, I think. So it's happening, and it's happening probably more slowly than people would like for it to happen, I'm sure. But I think things are changing, and it's pretty cool to be part of it, to be a witness to it. Even it's a cool time in horror. I don't think the 2000s, sorry to Sam Weinman and Jordan Crucchiola, I don't think the 2000s were some apex of horror quality necessarily, but like we're in it right now. We're in it when like really interesting shit is happening. I see your Freaky poster behind you and your Promising Young Woman poster. These are exciting movies that are being made that are moving the needle on this stuff, which I think it's really cool to be, running a horror magazine while this stuff is happening. I'm stoked.
I loved Freaky as well. So that, but I'll let one of the other guys also ask a question. So I'm not.
When you've got 4 hosts on a podcast, shouldn't you have like a talking stick or something? Like now it's Liam's turn. Like I do a podcast with like 6 people. Yeah,
we're working. We're still new. I've also listened to the Fangoria podcast. Mike, yeah, we've got a long way to go.
We're already 5 months old.
That's very true. And so we're lucky with who we've, I'll say this is still a very big opportunity to us that you're sitting down with us. So,
I sent the magazine to the printer 2 days ago. I didn't have shit to do today, so all good. It's over.
You haven't spoken.
I have got a question, but mine is non-horror related, which is it's fine. It's fine. Because obviously you are a Bond aficionado.
Sure.
So I wanted to know, because I am British, which would you class as the best Bond era?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question correctly. I hate. I never make top 10 lists unless someone's paying me to do it. I don't like ranking things again unless someone's paying me to do it. But as a fan of that property. And when I say that property, I'm talking about it's the novels, it's all of it for me. To me, the truest Bond is the first 2, maybe the first 4 if you want to count Thunderball. It feels the most like Fleming's version of the character to me. Now, having said that, my favorite one is, depending on the day, it's On Her Majesty's, or it's From Russia with Love, or it's Casino Royale. And so I'm not married to any particular era. I do think. I'm not a giant Brosnan fan. I'm sorry to say. I try to appreciate him, but to me, it's the most watered down version of the character. And I know a whole generation grew up. A whole generation grew up on the video game, and if what quality doesn't really enter into it. And it's true of horror too. Whatever you saw when you were 12, that's the one, right? That's the one that you had burned into your head. Yeah. And for me, it was on television, but so it's hard to argue with like folks who grew up with Brosnan because they just won't hear it. He's their Bond. But I think that the Craig era has made it matter in a way that it maybe hadn't since Connery. I think that it's a pop culture event in a way that it hadn't been since the Connery years. And it's with that in mind, and I don't know who's seen the movie and your readers or whatnot, I don't want to spoil anything, but it makes what they've done with the last one really kind of audacious. Because like they repositioned the franchise as something huge and really kind of just move their own goalposts. So I have no idea what they're going to do next. It would be foolish to even attempt to try to continue the tone of the new ones. So I think that means that the new ones will be excitingly different. Like, it'll be a whole different tone. But could you make a kind of chill, quippy Roger Moore Bond work in 2023? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you update that? How do you make him like a guy who's kind of like a fun-loving adventurer again? You know what I mean? Because I think the dark and gritty won't cut it again. You can't do it again. It's just going to feel like yesterday's Meatloaf.
Oh, that's
my.
I don't know how to feel about that now.
What do you think? Where do you sit on the franchise?
I can't. I do find it difficult to see, like you say, where it's going to go next. I think there needs to be, although there's been the same amount of time between this film and the previous one, and there was between the two eras of Craig and Brosnan. So it's kind of like I think they're going to have to do another large break and I'd really like to see, obviously with Amazon sort of acquiring, I'd like to see maybe a spin-off series of MI5 or something to do with that, and maybe but my thing is, I think that they set up some really great characters in this last couple of films that I'm like, how do we carry on from that? Because I'd still love to see these characters, but then the way that it ends, I feel like it needs to just kind of begin again. So it's kind of like, I'm like, oh,
yeah. What about you, Liam?
Yeah, I just assumed they would continue on and just pretend he hadn't died.
Spoiler alert.
I hope they don't do that.
I mean, it's been long enough, and it's out on PVOD.
If we're spoiling, like, here,
absolutely.
Very clearly, my big problem with the last one was that there was a contractual mandate of how that was going to end, up to and including the shot of it. You know what I mean? No ambiguity. Vaporized by cluster bombs, and that's like, that had to be in writing for him to come back. I'm 100% sure of that. And then you've got a movie that had to reverse engineer itself into that ending. So as much of how much I enjoyed a lot of the new film, I do feel like the ending didn't feel particularly organic to me. It was this kind of movie, and then it was this kind of movie. So I'm struggling with that still as a Bond fan. You know, I'll get there eventually. It's a movie that's playing while I'm on the couch, and it's fine. As all Bond movies are. But I don't think you're going to see any of those people again. The problem is that it's the most well-cast supporting cast that the franchise has ever had.
Yeah,
and definitely. I think Moneypenny, Tanner, Q, and M are all award-winning actors. Some of them have been nominated for Oscars. Like, you're not going to keep them around for another 10 years, I don't think. I just don't see it happening.
I was shocked they kept Judi Dench for as long as they did.
It's a one weird hiccup. It's a one weird one where they just were like, okay, yeah, Judy's still M, fine. But I don't think you can do that now. I think we've become too literal minded as an audience, and the Marvel world had done that to us, where continuity has to drive everything.
That's true.
Which
I love Marvel, but it's true.
Yeah.
It would be fun to go to like a campy Bond.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you make it work? Not so that it's campy, but not stupid. Campy, but without being like silly. And I think there's a difference, right? And there's got to be a way to kind of, so like Ready or Not is a horror movie, just to sort of keep it in our one foot in each thing. Ready or Not's a horror movie, but Ready or Not is hilarious, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You could do a funny Bond that still works as an action film, I think.
You could.
And I think that you kind of have to, otherwise it's going to be too unfavorably compared to what came before.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Maybe someone like Edgar Wright could do something interesting with that, something like Baby Driver. Maybe he could kind of bring it back to its comedic roots. At the same time, I haven't seen Last Night in Soho, so I'm not sure if that's good or not. So maybe.
So I think Edgar's a lot more flexible than people give him credit for. I have seen Last Night in Soho, and like, now you're gonna make me name drop. So, but you brought it up. But I have talked to Edgar about Bond, and I do think he would be a spectacular choice for 26. I'll say that. Like, I think he can do the thing I'm talking about. I think.
Yeah,
I love the Cornetto trilogy, so I'd be happy with it.
Yeah.
I recently watched Shaun of the Dead. That's quite a great movie. As someone who's not a Bond fan, like, I've only seen the Daniel Craig ones, which I did plan on watching all 25 movies for No Time to Die, but then I just, like, the Blu-ray box set is just so expensive, so I never did. But I will eventually. And these new films, what I will say is, what I like about them so much is they kind of feel like old-timey blockbusters, which is something we don't get very often. But I do, since I haven't been exposed to that comedic side of Bond, I think it's something that could be really interesting. It is a shame that they're going to cast someone who's so amazing as Lashana Lynch and never use her again, because I don't think they can go back to these movies. Just such a shame. But if they move forward in a completely new direction, I think that's something that will be really, really interesting. Phoebe Waller-Bridge did a great job with this one, but someone even more like that.
Yeah, I mean, you were going to watch 25 before this one. They certainly gave you enough time, Ben.
They did.
What were you waiting for exactly? Yeah, but anyone who asked me which one should I watch before the new one, I was like, don't gorge yourself on these movies. This one's going to be 3 hours long. Make it special. Don't make it like chapter 25. Make it its own thing, right? But yeah, I mean, when people ask about which one should they watch before, I try to curate something that makes sense, but that's digestible. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it could be, I've pitched this to like movie theaters here. I'm like, we can program, like, what if you did every Bond's last one? You did Connery's last one, and then you did Roger Moore's last one, and then you did, of course, that means you got to do Die Another Day, which, people might tap out during, but I think it's interesting to sort of compare the runs of the different actors in terms of like the context of it. But like, Christ, you said something about the gap is the same as the other gap, but like Craig's run is like it encompasses like several different Bonds. Like it's all of Moore's and all of Dalton's, or it's all of Dalton's, and like his run is like equal to any other two guys run, which is interesting. But then you got Tom Cruise, who's been playing Ethan Hunt since 1996.
That's still, I mean,
Jesus, is that how long it's been?
Yeah. I still enjoy them all. I enjoy them all except the second one, but it's impressive that he's been able to do that. But
it's crazy.
Well, Liam feels old now.
And
Liam had to go on mute. Yeah,
I'm dying a little bit. Got that much of a shock.
That's fair. Well, pulling it back to horror and talking, obviously, we were talking about films that came out this year. To you, then, have you got a favorite horror? Have you made your decision on your favorite horror movie of 2021? We recently did our best and worst, so we know what ours are. But what about you?
Gosh, I am drawing a complete blank. I apologize, but I've got to look it up. I'm very tired and old. Gosh. Well, tell me what yours favorite was, and let's talk about that for a second.
Okay, mine was Candyman.
Okay,
which I know was like a bit controversial, but I really, really liked that film. And I think it was because of I just thinking back to the old one, but maybe it was like the nostalgia of the original one that like kept me going. But I don't know. And it was like the first horror film I saw back in cinemas, and so it kind of just like it felt right. So that was mine.
Yeah, I loved how Candyman was it was in conversation with the original film in a lot of ways, and watching them together, I think, enriches both of them. I would say that, but I thought they did a nice job on it. You know what screws me up about these lists is that when I go to film festivals, half the horror films I saw this year aren't out yet, so they're coming out next year.
I'm actually very jealous about that because
don't. It's not a jealousy thing. It's like when I'm trying to like make the list of like, oh, what was great this year? I'm like, oh, well, what was great this year was When the Screaming Starts, but that's not out anywhere yet.
Oh, I don't know that one, but I'm looking forward to it now.
I'll tell you, I'll give you a little scoop right now, is that it is a sort of documentary found footage spoof.
Okay, that's secret. Yeah.
But it's about a filmmaker who finds a guy who's decided to become a serial killer. And he's going to sort of follow him on his journey to become a serial killer. And it's English. Yeah, it's a British film.
So there is a film in 2004 that was on my favorite list, which is called The Last Horror Movie, and is about a guy who hires this cameraman who is a serial killer, and it's in the UK, and he makes him film murdering all these people.
This goes a bit of another. This is a little more Spinal Tap than that.
Okay. Oh,
It's a little,
I
it's
like
it's
that.
hilarious. It's a lot of fun. It's not got a distributor yet, but I saw that at a film festival and it was really good. There's another one from Kazakhstan called Sweetie, You Won't Believe It, which is sort of a spin on a slasher movie. It's really, really good. I'm just naming things you can't watch yet. Sorry.
How about the Black Phone? Did you get to see that, and did you love that?
Yes, Black Phone is really, really good.
So excited to see that. I
I'm
want to
so-
see that now.
They played it at a film festival. I didn't get any special access. I happened to be at a film festival where it was playing, but it's it really nails like, and we talk about this in the new issue of the magazine, which is that the 70s were just a really unsafe feeling time for kids. If you grew up in the 70s, whether you were in school, on the way home from school, there were child abductions that were always in the news. So you always were waiting for somebody to come snatch you. But even just amongst kids, it was just very feral. And it was like, when you had a fight in school, it was like, it was called a rock fight. You threw rocks at each other. It was rough. And this movie really nails that aesthetic in a way that I haven't seen a film that wasn't actually filmed back then do. So I like that a lot.
I'm excited for that. And you mentioned found footage because that's George's favorite style of horror. And typically it's normally not mine. However, that being said, VHS 94 just blew it out of the water for me because of, Hail Ratma. And I haven't finished the article that Heather put out, but I need to finish that because that was that character. And I love Chloe, but that was just, I would say that was, to me, my favorite, but also leads into my next question, is the most surprising breakout of 2020 for horror, or 2021. I did not see that character or that image just really explode like it did social media wise.
Yeah, that was cool to see. And it was really gratifying because I'm friends with one of the producers and he was sending me, pictures from set, and I'm trying to get my head around what it is they're doing, but I didn't have a script or anything. I'm like, yeah, that looks cool, but what's happening there? And to see it all come together has been, very, very exciting and gratifying. They did a great job. 2021. I'm going back to 2021 now. Titane, arguably not a horror movie, but Titane was one of my favorite films this year.
That is such a phenomenal film. I don't know if the other three have seen it, but I have. They don't consume as much film as I do, I guess. I guess I get very little sleep, but Titane was phenomenal.
Yeah. Titane is like, so there's another movie called Under the Silverlake, and both of the films because both the films are second features for the directors, right? There's a feature debut, I think, unless I'm getting Under the Silverlake wrong, but like he had It Follows, big hit, and somebody said, do whatever you want for the next one. And Titane is the most do whatever you want for the next one film I've ever seen in my life. It is deliriously untethered to any reality but its own. And, it's that thing where you have no idea what's going to happen next, but you cannot wait to see what's going to happen next. There's very few films that sort of do that, right? Where you hit both those things. Most films, you're like, okay, I know where this is going, or you're excited, but like this, you're just in the wilderness, right? And I think Empty Man was another one like that, but that was technically a year before.
Another good one.
Yeah, but which I only saw this year, which also screws up my best of year lists.
This is why he doesn't do rankings, George.
Yeah, I know, they're a disaster.
People are not completely useless. Titane hasn't actually come out here yet.
That's why I haven't seen it.
So then you get a pass.
That sucks.
I'm really looking forward to
December
Titane though. It's going to be very good, I think. Although I doubt, like Spencer was supposed to come out here in Ireland, but it just never did. Really, there was a poster in my cinema November 8th, and it just never showed up in the country. Like,
wow,
I don't know why. So Titane probably will come out December 31st in like 2 or 3 cinemas in England or maybe Wales, and then it'll come out here in like June or July. So it'll be well before I see it.
I feel for you guys now. We're spoiled over here.
Yeah. Ireland, Boys from County Hell was a film that I really loved this year. Has anyone seen that?
No.
And that's an Irish film.
It's on Shudder in the States. And yes, it's an Irish film. It's very. So I went to Ireland a couple of years ago, and here's my impression of Ireland. It was that. So my wife and I were driving across the country, and we were listening to a lot of talk radio, and there was a lot of folks just being very open about their feelings on the talk radio, and it was like you're talking about how their death of their parents from cancer impacted them and whatnot. Maybe this is just a total coincidence, but like we were walking around in I think Dublin. No, it wasn't Dublin. I've got to find out. I'm sorry, but
if it was a big city, it could have been Dublin or Cork. There's a lot of kind of cities. Like
yeah,
Waterford,
but we drove laterally and we stopped at a couple of places. But anyway, there was a church and it said film festival tonight, and we just walked in, and it was all these short films. It was really interesting, but the Q&A was very much this sort of mournful confessional, people standing up and talking about their pain, and we looked at each other and like, this is like the talk radio that we were listening to for 8 hours. Is this what Ireland is? Is Ireland just more in touch with their own suffering and more open about sharing it? And anyway, long story short, Boys from County Hell, it's very much like that. It's like all of these family relationships where there is a lot of like pouring their hearts out, but it's also very funny. And there's a vampire killing all of them. So
I think actually does sound really interesting.
It's really good.
Watching that later this weekend.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And of course, we have to talk about Malignant as one of the highlights of 2021.
George hated it, but I loved it.
George.
That is so camp. That is so.
It's camp, right? I hated it until I loved it. I hated it for about 35 minutes. And then when I saw just like this, just not even the big twist, but just some of the fucking choices. Sorry if I'm not supposed to swear.
Oh, no, you can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But just some of the choices that were happening in there were tipping its hand to like, oh, this is a high comedy. This is James Wan screwing with us. And I don't know. And once I was on board, I was all in. It was so fun.
He is a brilliant filmmaker. I really like talk about favorite horror films of the year. Like I would say that I mildly enjoyed the new Conjuring movie. I thought it was really fun. I like the New England sort of aesthetic, but I miss what he does with those movies, because when I first watched like The Conjuring 2, I was like, this is probably one of my favorite horror films of all time. It was a great Christmas movie. It was a great movie. He's such a talented filmmaker, and he so brought that to Malignant. It would definitely be top 3.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a documentary about folk horror that everyone needs to see called Woodlands, Dark and Days Bewitched by Kayla Janice. It is
write it down.
I am writing it down.
Write it down. It's about 3 hours long, but you'll watch it and be writing a list of movies that you need to check out, because it's sort of like the whole history of folk horror in cinema. And it starts with like Blood on Satan's Claw and The Wicker Man, and sort of takes it into the modern era and stuff. It's really, really good. And it's really well researched. And I believe it's coming to Shudder soon, I think.
Oh. We love Shudder.
Yeah, I mean,
on Shudder, it's all
not
good.
to keep shilling for Shudder, but Violation was another one that I saw this year. That's a rough watch, but it's singular. There's nothing else like that this year. It's a rape revenge film, and if that's not your speed, that's cool. They're usually not for me, but this is made by women, and it's got a very specific point of view, but it's fucking brutal. Yeah,
Good. It's what they deserve.
I'm trying to see what else I watched this year. There was a lot of them. In the Earth by Ben Wheatley.
It's so bad we haven't
I've
seen
seen
any
that
of these
advertised.
movies.
It didn't. Yeah, that hasn't come out for us either.
Really?
I will put that down. Yeah, they actually get.
You guys
We
made
get
it.
screwed over all the time.
Yeah.
In the Earth is he filmed it during the pandemic, and it's one of the few films that I've seen filmed during the pandemic that also kind of references the pandemic, although maybe not this pandemic, but felt weirdly authentic in how it was sort of presented. But it's totally about something else, and it makes a fine double feature with that folk horror documentary, because it's sort of a piece with that. It turns into something much more primal. And Ben Wheatley, who made Kill List and High Rise, he's one of you guys, so I think you should.
Yeah, I enjoyed High Rise.
You should get to know him.
Oh, it's got Joel Fry. Oh, Reece Shearsmith's in it. Oh, I've got to watch this.
Yeah, it's it's a weird sort of like man versus nature thing, and it's maybe also a slasher movie, and it's a lot of pagan shit happening in there. It's really cool.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I mean, we're also a shill for Shudder because they're very nice to us.
Nice.
We get screeners, which we did not expect to happen. So,
well, you know, the thing about Shudder is that every other streaming service out there is sort of algorithm based and whatnot. Shudder is Sam Zimmerman picking movies for you to watch. Literally what it is. Like, it's a human curated service, and it might be the only one. And I think that you can tell when you watch those movies that someone is looking out for you. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Got some rare finds that I didn't know existed. So
one of these companies said that they were making AI. I remember this from like a few months ago, maybe even a few years ago. I can't tell time anymore. But it was that an AI was going to make decisions for the company. It was either Netflix or Warner Brothers or something like that. And I think that takes the human element out of art as a whole. It's because I think our artificial intelligence, like, they can design buildings, but they can't have the human touch that a human architect would have, or make a film the way that Mike Flanagan or James Wan or all of these amazing indie directors would make a film so personal and incredible that humans can. So what I like about Shudder is that whenever you're watching something on there, you do get that feeling, and you also get recommended some incredible stuff that you would never have seen. Like Host is one of the biggest surprises of my like film watching history, like ever. It's just such a huge surprise, and it's excellent. Another film made during the pandemic that could only have been made during like impossible circumstance, like of a pandemic, and like a really great idea that, like, if you look through time, I think it's a great. That's just a side note, but watch Host, everyone. It's very, very good.
Yeah, Host is pretty much the Blair Witch of the pandemic, I think, and it'll be in the history books for sure. I'm glad there aren't 5 movies like it. You know what I mean? Someone did it, and someone did it early. It's sort of like, you know, it's like licking the cookie. You know, this it's claiming marking the territory. No one else needs to do the Zoom horror movie because Host has done it, and it's fantastic. I really dug that.
No, it was really good. Well, speaking of curating with Shudder, moving back to your job, which is of course editor-in-chief of Fangoria. How did it feel that day that you got the call, text, email, fax that said, "Hi, we want you"? Hi.
Wouldn't it be cool if it was a fax?
Yeah,
I didn't know fax still happened, George.
I'm like unrolling that rolling
like
fax paper. Yeah. It was weird. I'm not gonna, like, you know, the line is that we grew up with Fangoria and the brand means so much to us, et cetera, et cetera. But if the brand meant so much to everybody, it wouldn't have run aground in 2016 when it did. It was in disarray, it was in disrepair, and it certainly wasn't anything I had thought about much at that point in my life. I was writing on the internet for free because it was like a stress reliever from my day job, which was producing anything from home improvement shows to true crime to, you know, whatever somebody was paying me to produce. But as a movie fan, I had to write about movies, and whether I was getting paid for them or not was immaterial. So I was just writing and getting published on websites because websites like free content. But my writing had gotten the attention of the person who bought Fangoria in 2018. And so when they hit me up and said, "Well, I just bought Fangoria, would you be interested in editing it?" And it was a weird. It wasn't like I was sitting around waiting to get hired by Fangoria, is what I'm saying, you know? But what I don't take for granted is what an amazing opportunity that was presented to me in terms of, like, here's a horror brand that everybody knows. It's not, you know, some new thing that somebody was starting. It was like, here's the thing you read when you were 12. Here's the thing that got you into movies. Here's the reason you love horror movies. Do you want to run it? Right. So of course I was lit up like a Christmas tree. And then it was just about trying to figure out what do you do with a magazine in 2018? Because there was a reason, not just mismanagement, that Fango had run into the ground. There's a reason people didn't buy magazines anymore so much. And we're on it. It's the internet. So it was like a month of just sort of looking at what was out there and seeing what magazines were still being published. And honestly, just doing the job that Fangoria had stopped doing, right? Like, and doing it well. So it wasn't even like pick up where we left off. We had to reinvent the magazine because what had been done was being covered well by magazines like Rue Morgan, Diabolique, and Horror Hound and such, and Delirium. So Fango had to be something different, or there was no reason to do it because it was covered. And so that was the challenge. And I sort of drafted a pitch and said, here's what I would do. And here's how I would make people give a shit again, right? If possible. And, they bought into that more or less. And we've been doing it since 2018. I'm about to hit my 4-year anniversary on the mag.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, it's cool. But the crux of it was how do you make it feel special again to the people who read it when they were 12 and couldn't wait for it to be on the shelves again? And one was scarcity. No reason to publish 10 times a year. Publish 4 times a year. Quality, make it something you covet, make it a quality product that you want to hold in your hands, and don't compete with the internet, present yourself as an alternative to the internet. So I don't know how those mags do it, where they're like, subscribe to this paper magazine, but also you can read it on your Kindle. Like we set a line in the sand very early on that we would just be, our articles would be in the magazine. That's where you'd have to go to get that content. And then of course, what follows there is trying to come up with content that makes people want to go chase the magazine down.
I mean, your Halloween Kills one was selling for $200 on eBay. That blew me away. I'm like, guys,
you and me both.
Subscribe.
I have no idea why that's a thing.
I almost wanted to sell it, but I was like, nope. I think I'll just keep this. That's messed up, though. That's good,
it was weird. It was weird, and I'm glad that we're now in a place where folks are subscribing and getting it, and we've actually changed owners since that person that hired me, but. And we've got the new owners convinced that we need to be on store shelves just for optics, right? Even if, like, I've hit the ceiling on Twitter of like whoever I'm going to let know that Fango is back. There's other people out in the world who don't know it's back still, and we have to be on store shelves for that to break through that bubble. So we're finally on shelves in Barnes and Noble, and that's cool. But I am sad, excuse me, that so much great content in those first 3 issues are now like, if we're keeping our word, you can't get them unless you go and buy those things off the internet somewhere, but we can't reprint them. And some cool articles in there, I think. I mean, I had Jordan Peele write an article for us in the magazine, and that issue sold out. So, although between you and me, I just talked to Monkey Paw, and you can read his article on the Monkey Paw blog. Like they posted a PDF of his pages with our permission, of course. But like when we said we wouldn't reprint, we didn't say we were going to tell Jordan Peele he can't reprint. Come on.
I mean, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, speaking of content, is there any subject that you would love to get into Fangoria that you haven't had the chance to get in there yet?
I don't know that there's a bucket list. It frequently frustrates me that our publishing schedule and our lead time needed to get a magazine out the door is just so hard for studios to understand. I have so many people who will reach out after we're going to the printer. They're reaching out to me about a February movie this week. I'm like, well, I'm at the printer and I'm putting together April's issue. So, and I feel like we had this conversation 3 months ago. What do you need for it to sink in? and all love to Netflix, but they seem to not give a shit about publicizing their movies. And I honestly, just because I'm such a dyed in the wool Texas Chainsaw fan, that I would have 100% put the new movie on the cover, but I found out the release date after we went to the printer. This week, we found out the release date this week, and it's February.
That's true.
I'm not gonna. So, I mean, I'm a big Texas Chainsaw fan.
Yes,
You can see.
That's amazing.
But
that.
yeah, and it just sort of pisses me off that there's no pipeline from them. I have partners who are great. Universal is so helpful to us. Paramount's been great. Blumhouse, great partner. Warner Brothers, we had a good experience with them with Godzilla versus Kong. Although I got to weather all of the hate from fanboys who said Godzilla doesn't belong on the cover of Fangoria. And
Fuck them.
well, listen, personal feelings aside, I can hold up issue 1 from 1979 that has Godzilla on it and say, well, there's a history, there's precedent. And then the 6 other times Godzilla's been on the cover of the magazine. But that's the other frustration of this job, is that everybody has their version of Fangoria in their head. And so many of them have checked out for 30 years and show up now demanding that I give them their childhood back, which is, not going to happen. But but trying to serve all these masters is tough. And I sort of have to like make peace in my head with the fact that we can try to acknowledge those needs. But one thing that's consistent about Fangoria over 40 years is that it's never been a nostalgia magazine. It's always been about what's happening now. So you can get mad about Freaky, or you can get mad about the Pride shirt or whatever, but like Fangoria has always been a magazine about the present. And I don't know, every week or so I have to remind somebody of that, which is, I wish I didn't have to, but it's okay.
And it's not as if the present, sorry, I'm just going to say, it's not as if that the present isn't so damn exciting with everything that's happening.
January issue.
We get a lot of coded feedback like Jordan Peele's not horror. I'm like, no, he's not horror. What are you trying to say here exactly? Get Out's not a horror movie. I'm like, okay, it's not. It's just a lot of. I mean, they're not listening. Fuck it, but it's a lot of shrieking old dinosaurs who are like just terrified of their own obsolescence. And I'm older than most of them, so I don't quite get what they're so afraid of. Like, are you in competition with Jordan Peele? Like, this is what's happening in horror, and it's really rad. Like, why don't we celebrate this? I don't know. I'm like a broken record sometimes with this stuff, but every couple of weeks, somebody shows up who hasn't been paying attention to this brand in 20 years or more, asking what I've done with their favorite magazine. It's a gas.
I mean, well, and I will say that's not our target audience. You're talking with four queer people. So, I mean, they're definitely not listening to us.
Well, maybe they might. Wouldn't it be great if we, change some hearts and minds?
I wouldn't be opposed to that because that's listeners, but yeah.
We try. We can only try.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them here. But my question is, my question leads in nicely from what we were talking about, getting away from the past and what it has been. Where do you see the future of Fangoria? Like what I mean, where is it going in your mind that you can tell us?
I ask myself every day. I mean, the analogy I always use is I'm always trying to like tune up an engine while the car is going 70 miles an hour down the highway. Like we don't stop to breathe hardly ever. So it's hard to have a big picture kind of thing when I'm always just trying to lay the tracks for the next thing. But in a way, I think Fangoria shouldn't have some plan about what it wants to be in 5 years. Fangoria has to reflect what's happening. So we're not going to drive the culture. We're going to reflect it, right? And I think we can make little bits of progress here and there, and I can make sure that I'm putting voices in the magazine that haven't had that platform. Maybe I can do my part with that stuff. But I mean, my to-do list is to leave the magazine better than I found it, and to leave it in the hands of somebody who's going to make it even better. I think there's a weird thing that I've seen in my whole career of like people who leave a job and secretly hope that the job will fail after they leave. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I want it to be great after I'm gone. And it has to be sort of on solid footing for that to happen while I'm here. So that's sort of my job, is that I need to get the place ready for the next tenant. Right. So whatever that entails is what I need to do. But as far as big picture stuff for the brand, you have to talk to my bosses about that, because I know they're talking about making films and turning it into much more of a multimedia brand, and that's exciting stuff. But that's something that I think every previous owner going back to 1990 has tried to do, and that's well and good, but that's above my pay grade. And my Fango hero was like the dude who was editing it in the 80s, who quit to go edit Rock Video magazine. He had this perfect blend of like knowledge and irreverence that I loved. And he wasn't thinking about like what the brand was going to be in 5 years. He was just in there doing the damn thing. And so that's sort of been my metrics. Of course, whatever my bosses are trying to do with the brand, I want to be in support of. So I'm here to support, but as far as vision for the brand, that's above me.
So I know myself and Yutaka, we did mention this earlier before starting, but obviously myself and Yutaka have been really huge fans of Dragula. So obviously you were on there as a guest judge. How did you find going on there as a guest judge?
It was super weird because I was such a fan of the show. I watched that show. I binged season 2, I think, during like a winter where we couldn't like go out, and we were just like so excited, riveted to the show. And I became such a fan of like the contestants on the second and third seasons. And then I got to meet Bitch Puddin when we interviewed her for the queer horror doc that I was working on. And we interviewed the Belay brothers at that time too. So we were always like kind of in each other's orbit since the Fango gig, and I'm always trying to be cool around them because I'm like a super fan and I don't want to be like that guy in front of them. But they invited me to be a guest judge, and I couldn't make the original date work, which is a bummer because it would have meant I was on with Tanana Reeve Dew, who I produced Horror Noire with together. And I would have loved to have done an episode with Tanana Reeve, but instead I ended up going on with Hodor from Game of Thrones. And he was cool as hell. And he's also a drag queen, which I didn't know until I was talking with him. But he was Ireland's biggest drag queen at one time. It was like his Revlon with 2 V's was his drag name. And what I wrote about this in our newsletter. I don't know if any of you guys read our weekly newsletter, but here's the weird part of the experience is that we are taken into a dressing room and we're fed, we're kept, separated from the contestants. We are not allowed to talk to the contestants. We're not allowed to interact with them. They're not allowed to talk or interact with us. So we don't even see them. They're separate. Although like while I was down there, I could hear, like if I had walked down a hall, I would have been in the room they were in. Like not the cauldron, but like the real behind the scenes basement thing. And so when you watch an episode, you're watching in the boudoir, you're watching them kind of put their outfits together and saying, this outfit's inspired by this legend, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going for a kind of this thing. I don't get any of that. We get put in the seats, and I watch 7 performers lip sync the same song, one after another. So all I have to judge them is who's better than who, right? Not did you nail the challenge? Not, that backstory of that outfit is so perfect. I didn't know the backstory of like, I don't know how in depth we're going to get here, but like I was on episode 5 and it was the ghost ship glamour challenge.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand what Hoso's outfit was meant to convey because I didn't get the context or the backstory. I was told
we watched it and didn't get it. It's fine.
Listen, you've got to talk to her next week. You might want to watch your mouth.
I told Hoso after the episode aired, I go, I just want you to know, because we had watched it and we were already talking with him. I'm like, I didn't feel your look. I didn't get it. I apologize, but I still think you're an incredible competitor. Hope you still come on the show. And they're like, yeah, I'm drunk. It's cool. I'm like, okay, well, then we're good.
Yeah. And I will say that the photos that she dropped online of that outfit after, it was a much sort of better rendition of the outfit than what was on stage. But whatever. I didn't know Sigourney was a cis woman when I sat down to this stuff. Like one performer after another, and I was like, cool. And in my head, I was like, Sigourney, Jade, and Betty were almost competing for against each other with the same look. Yeah, they all kind of had this glam, ghostly thing. And what gave Sigourney the edge to me was that I don't know how much of this read, but she was like all waterlogged with bruise marks and stuff, and I really kind of dug that. And I thought her movement was really great. And Dali, who I was a fan of from a previous season, and who I couldn't help myself, and I had to sneak a hello to backstage when I saw them. But I thought that look was really fucking cool. Yeah, and I was kind of like, you're coached to say things and you're coached to give feedback and stuff, but I kind of didn't think, and this is the thing I reflected on later in my editorial, was like, I kind of threw an offhand negative comment to Saint. And in the moment, we're performing, we're doing a show. This is the show. I'm supposed to be, doing this. Watching it in the edit, I felt like a piece of shit. I felt terrible. I felt like, who the fuck am I to be judging this person's art the way that I was, and in such a casual way, in such a dismissive way. And what I wrote about was like, it gave me a real glimpse watching the edited show, how much we are all kind of bit players in someone else's movie, right? And you show up and you're here for 20 minutes or whatever. I'm here with you guys for an hour, and I'm going to leave, and you guys are going to have the rest of you. And it made me really think about how much I want to be, not leaving a negative mark on somebody else's day that way. And this is maybe deeper than you wanted to get into with Dragula, but
absolutely. This was, we love this. Are you kidding me?
This was my experience. And I actually have spoken with Saint on Instagram and DM and stuff since then, talking about this. And I just feel like, I don't know, I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, maybe, even though it's a reality show and it's, whatever, we can dismiss it, but it's people's feelings at the end of the day. And I didn't really take into account that, like, when I saw Hoso react in the show, in the Cauldron afterwards, I really didn't know what I was contributing to when I gave that feedback.
But it's a pressure cooker as well. So something that in the real world, somebody saying to you, oh, well, I don't get what you're doing in this context, it's not going to be as like soul destroying kind of thing as it is going to be in that kind of situation. Like if you're out in the real world and someone just walked past you and said, "Your look shit," you'd be like, "Who's that dick?" And continue walking. It's just the pressure cooker of the environment, isn't it?
Well,
sure.
I mean, 100 grand's on the line too, so I could kind of see part of that.
And let's give all these queens some credit. Like, they're not shrinking violets; they can take it, obviously, right?
Yes.
I'm not under any illusion that I've ruined someone's life or anything like that. But I just felt gross watching it afterwards. I was like, oh man, that was a bad day for that person, and I didn't help. You know what I mean? And on the flip side of it, I was part of giving Sigourney her only win so far, and and to watch her kind of like not even get to enjoy that because of the tumultuous sort of climate that I had helped sort of stoke.
We didn't talk about you on that, but when we the next episodes when we had Sigourney on, and we're like, let's go ahead and celebrate your win because nobody did, and they should have, because it was a great win. And honestly, between Sigourney and Dali, I was like, that's very hard. But I was like, you had the bigger edge in terms of Sigourney just knows how to give great face and performance. I mean, Dali does too, but there's something that when you look at Sigourney, I could just feel like she's looking at me. And that's what I was like, you know how to perform. And it came off in that episode, and I really loved it. But it was that Cauldron was definitely probably the most spicy it's been, I think, in the seasons that I have seen this show. Yeah. I know it got a little heated with the bitch pudding season. So,
well, to take you back behind the scenes. So I don't know how I can diagram this to you, but everything you see there is sort of in one space. So if you're standing here and you're looking at the stage, to your right is obviously the Belay Brothers seats in the judge's box. To your left is the Cauldron, and right behind you is the boudoir. It's all one giant space. You can see every room from every space, even though it's kind of cut differently like that. So I was sort of in the judge's box afterwards, and we had asked. I said, look, we're supposed to judge their looks and everything, but you got smoke machines. I'm far back from the stage. Can they walk over to us, and can we look at their makeup jobs and stuff and their costuming? So they all kind of paraded them in front of us, and we sort of got to check out the glued on seashells and like I said, that bruise work that Sigourney had done that was so good. And Dali's sort of like his light feature on his hat, shit like that. It was all very cool. And I was just geeking out over that stuff because I'm a makeup nerd from like when I was a teenager. I love seeing that stuff. And then they went back into the Cauldron, and I think something happened off schedule or something, because suddenly cameramen were running to go film it. Like, I think they didn't wait for, like, that stuff is not as set up as you might think it is. Like, they go off stage and start laying into each other. And then it was a matter of like the cameramen having to run, like the camera people having to run up and get it. And they kind of let me linger behind them and look at a monitor, but I couldn't quite hear everything that was going on. But it was, I thought somebody was going to get in a fight. I thought there was going to be physical violence, like for real. And I'm a guy who watches the show, right? So I know the deal, but like, this was hot. It got heated.
Yeah.
This has been the most, I would say it's the most polarizing season. I love it, but I think in terms of, I would say our fandom has never been this horrible, and they have, and they know it.
Yeah. So who was it? Dali was telling me about this, that people are being shitty to each other. The fans are being like the camps,
It's
right?
horrible.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It
There's
just
been death threats to
the
contestants
way
and
obviously
stuff like that,
people are perceived on the show, what people don't understand, it's still a reality show and it's still meant to make good TV. Granted, I think some conversations might need to be had, but I don't think the way that people are going about outside it, and this isn't the contestants, this is the fans, where they think they might be helping spur that conversation, they're actually being more harmful because they're using, as Liam said, derogatory comments, death threats, all this. It is horrible. And this is, I love Drag Race, but that's like Drag Race fandom. That's not Dragula fandom.
Is that a schism? Is that something you see with RuPaul's Drag Race a little more often?
Oh,
Fans
like
being
all the
shitty?
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
shitty fans. Death threats, racist, the lot. Like
It's common
just
for that, sadly.
very, very common. And it is very, very unfortunate. And that's never it's never been, it might have happened in the past, but it's never been like a prevalent thing with Dragula. But for some strange reason, it's all of a sudden become very prevalent with Dragula, and it's quite concerning.
Wow.
The Boulets put out a very nice response in terms of to help kind of like put a stop to that, but fans are going to be fans, sadly. But yeah, this has been, it's been for entertaining to watch, but outside of the show, I'm just like, oh, guys.
Yikes. I think I've seen glimpses, but I've missed a lot of it. But I also think it's not to excuse any of that, but I think that this is like the strongest top 4 I've ever seen on the show. And so those fan bases are so intense, right? And I think that probably feeds it, maybe. I watched last week's and I was like, I don't want to watch the next episode. I don't want to see any of these 4 go home. It's terrible. And that they did a cliffhanger pissed me off so much.
Oh, we've been livid. Absolutely livid.
We won't talk about what we've seen then.
Shit.
We're recording, so I didn't want to say anything.
People know we have screeners. We don't talk about it. We keep all that.
Yeah,
I will say I can't wait to see people on tour. Sigourney's actually going to be here next week in St. Louis. And then I'm hoping Hosa will make their way through the Midwest. And I'm hoping actually all the top 4 will come through St. Louis, but it's very rare in terms of trying to get people sometimes. But then again, we also have our very own Maxi Glamour, so I'm also very excited about that. So.
I keep looking at Sigourney's Instagrams, like the calendars, and like she was getting closer and closer to Philly, and then nope, to the south, Texas. Shit. But give her a hug for me. Tell her I said hello.
I will. I can't. We're so excited.
Very cool.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, I've got tickets for the UK tour, so
nice.
But we'll let Ben ask the final question since we've gone a little bit over because we talked Dragula.
I am honored. I don't think I've ever gotten. I think I maybe have gotten to ask this question once, and that is that we've had a really great time here, and we've gotten to know so much, but we have to ask one really final, really, really important question, and that is, what's your favorite scary movie?
Oh, Christ.
I had a feeling that would be the response after this whole conversation in general.
God. Officially, I refuse to answer, but I will say that the film that holds its power over me, shitty sequel after shitty sequel, it doesn't matter. The original still just works in a way that I think no other film does, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think, and if anyone hasn't seen it, if anyone just sort of thinks they have a familiarity with it, or they watch the one in 3D or something, watch that original film in the best transfer you can find, Blu-ray 4K. It holds up to every format upgrade I've been on the journey with it on, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie that does not feel like a movie. It feels unsafe. It feels legitimately like something wrong is happening in that film. And I don't mean like some artless, shitty snuff film. I mean, it feels like madness has been captured in that movie. And so that's the best answer I can give you, even though I technically am refusing to answer.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Like 100%. With Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I've told these guys about this video essay before that I watched on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and why it works so well. But this person goes really deep into how you can never truly make a sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because what the first film captures so brilliantly was like the sort of downfall in a way of like that part of America, and how it encapsulates a madness that a lot of people felt. And also to build on that would also kind of be to go against the principles of the movie. You know, that's just like way deeper stuff than just the objective film where it is, which it is a very, very good film. And for it to be that old and still be, and made for so cheap as well. Like, it's some of the greatest horror films of all time were made for so cheap. And I think that's what makes stuff really stand out. For like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was made for nothing, pretty much the same as stuff like Halloween. And it's amazing that we're still talking about them all these years later. So could not agree more. That is a great pick.
I think to see it in theaters.
Yeah,
I mean, I never got the chance, but
big screen is a good way to see it. I think it's, when people say cheap, they sort of think that means that corners are cut. But I think what it means really in this film's case is that extra effort was spent in other places, right? So you've got performers being pushed to their absolute limits. Like, we've all heard the story about the dinner table scene being a 24-hour shoot day because the 19-year-old under the grandpa makeup said, "I'm never putting this on again. Shoot everything right now." And they are really driving that woman to the brink of madness. And I think it over delivers. If it's cheap in terms of like how much money they spent, it is rich in how much energy and creativity and blood and sweat and tears that they put into it. And you feel it in a way that you don't feel it in a lot of other movies. I think it's a special movie, and it's so under my skin. I've gone to all of the locations just to try to exercise it right from my brain. I've gone and had breakfast in that house. It's a restaurant in Texas. You can go, and you should.
God.
Yeah,
I'm looking that up.
Yeah, it's I forget what it had, a few different names. I forget what it's called right now, but it's in Kingsland, Texas. It's a restaurant, and you can eat in that dining room. I mean, it's not themed like it, but you know, because you know that movie, you know that you're in that house, and the bones are all the same in terms of like structure of the house. The gas station, in our third issue, I profiled the guy who bought the gas station and restored it. And that's a place you can go and visit. It's very, I mean, but none of, like I said, I try to turn it into Disneyland for myself, right? I try to make it like a theme park, and I can go to these things, but it still doesn't change that movie for me. It's still a singular experience.
That's amazing. I'm gonna look that up. And and before we forget, Phil, is there anything you'd like to plug?
I'm so glad you asked. The issue 14 our issue 14 is coming out in January, and the way our subscriptions work is you've got to subscribe by a certain date to get that issue. And if you look behind Yutaka, you'll see our Scream cover, which is our subscriber exclusive. And if you want that cover, you just need to subscribe at fangoria.com by December 18th. So the end of this week, I don't know if it's midnight or 8 p.m. Just don't wait till the 18th. Just subscribe on payday. And use the code STAB5 to get 25% off a new subscription.
There you have it. And yes, honestly, the cover looked fantastic. And we can't wait because we're also both very huge, or George and I are huge Scream fans. Maybe
Excuse you.
George a little. Oh, okay, maybe you are too. And
Yeah,
maybe,
but I mean,
maybe he is. But
I
saw it in theaters. George, it's got a mask.
Nice. Well, I'm excited because I loved Ready or Not, so I want to see what those guys do with a new Scream film. And they wouldn't show it to me early, fuckers. But the magazine has so basically they're interviewed by Kevin Williamson in the magazine, so it's pretty cool.
Such a good.
I just need Nev Campbell back on my screen like ASAP.
It will be a great. That's only 35 days away. That movie today is 35 days away.
There you go.
We're hoping we get to see it soon.
Yeah.
Who knows what may
will
come
happen
in the future?
We may have interviews planned, guys. I don't know. So,
Cool.
but
We'll
again, thank you, Phil. And yes, guys, please subscribe. Really, it's a great magazine, and you don't want to be paying $200 for it. I'm just saying.
No.
I mean, you could, but
Yeah, but I don't get the $200, so no. I'd rather.
support Phil today.
Yeah. Here's my Venmo.
George, I'll let you close this out. But I think I've got some travel plans that I'm going to end up making. That's for sure.
Definitely. I think that sounds like a. We'll have to come over and do a big tour.
Do it.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Obviously, Phil, we want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor. We've had such a great time. And for those of you listening again, thank you very much. You continue to listen. It's great. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And of course, to the podcast as well. We've also got new merch. We did a video of, you can go and check that out, of course, which was done by our friend Kyle, where we are basically the cast of Scooby-Doo, with the monsters being, of course, the real monsters in horror. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much again, Phil. It's been amazing. And we will see you all next time. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.